Welcome to the Diversity Scholarships Foundation's Profiles in the Law. I'm your host, Jesse Reyes, President of the Diversity Scholarship Foundation and a Justice on the Illinois Appellate Court First District. As we've mentioned in previous programs that we've had, we always seek to try to have some very prominent and very well-known members of the legal profession on our program, and today is definitely no exception. With us today is Erin Clifford. Erin, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you have a very diverse and extensive career path. Can you tell us a little bit about your career path?
Sure. So I started off actually as a Chicago public high school teacher. I taught English at CPS for 5 years, and then I was debating if I should go to law school or go be a mental health counselor. I couldn't decide what to do, and so of course my father, who's a lawyer, and we have a family law firm, decided to, that I should go to law school, and so I went to law school, which I really enjoyed. But when I came out of law school, I started clerking over at the Illinois Appellate Court. And I was still kind of drawn into kind of the mental health and the wellness space. So I ended up going back and getting certified as a health and wellness coach. And when I came out, I started doing a lot of continuing legal education with lawyers and law firms, some of the bar organizations. So eventually I went and did get that master's in mental health counseling. So now it's really great because I'm able to be a partner and managing director at my family's firm, Clifford Law Offices. But then I also spend a lot of my time helping lawyers and other professionals really get what I like to say, a little bit more work-life harmony and kind of help them prevent some burnout.
So just so our viewers are also familiar with Clifford Law Offices, it's one of the more prominent law firms in the country, and you are the director and the manager of the firm.
I am.
So that must be a pretty heavy task to have to deal with, day-to-day operations in the firm, and then with the lawyers and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's every day is very different, but it's fun to go in there and help with the management, and I do a lot of the marketing and business development. So it's been really great working with my father, and we have such an amazing group of trial lawyers, many of which have gotten to be very good friends of mine. So I like being able to be a part of that, but I also really try to bring some wellness into the firm, right? Sort of that idea of how do you create more of a culture of well-being in your offices. Yeah.
So we're going to get to your book in a moment, but so you've had various different type of positions throughout your career: teacher, lawyer, law clerk, and for some people, making a transition or a change from one position to another is difficult, right? And so, could you share a little bit, what was your path in terms of what helped you to move on from one to the other?
For sure. I mean, I kind of got here, definitely not in a straight way, right? A straight line. And so for me, it was always, I'm a big proponent of, what's going to bring me fulfillment in life, but also when am I ready to take certain steps? And so, when I went to law school, for me, I went at the right time. I was a little older. I had worked for 5 years. I found that really helpful. And when I did become a lawyer, I was really trying to figure out, what area is the right thing for me. And so I tried some stuff, and I was curious. I had an open mind. And once I kind of figured out what I wanted to do, I really created a nice action plan for myself. But I think what helped me was, to just kind of sometimes get past that imposter syndrome, if you will, where we kind of feel do I deserve to be here? Am I good enough? By really finding great mentors and just kind of growing in my skill set by doing a lot of continuing education and things like that. Yeah. But I think, I always tell people when I work one-on-one with them, if there's something that you want to do, if you're, a lawyer or young professional, and you're like, I'm not sure where I want to go, just to try some stuff and, get to, feel things out and see what works for you, but don't be afraid to try something because you're not sure if you're going to be good at it, right? That's the experience is how you get good at things.
Right, yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, Erin is a best-selling author. U.S. Today touted her book as one of the top 10 books to read. And if I could borrow this for a moment, yeah. So the book is called Wellness Reimagined: A Holistic Approach to Health, Happiness, and Harmony. Just want to show this to our viewers. So tell us, what is wellness?
Okay, so to me, wellness, we think of wellness a lot that it's like the physical. You go to the doctor and you get your checkups every year. Hopefully everybody listening to this goes, right? But it's not just the physical. It's also the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. So when I think of wellness, I think of it sort of holistically. And we want to figure out a way for these different wellness domains to work together, because when you're not feeling great physically, sometimes it does, right? It impacts your mood, it impacts other things, and vice versa.
Yeah. And someone's path to wellness, is there like a one plan fits all, or is it individual?
It's very individual. And that was sort of one of the reasons I wrote my book was, when I was growing up, I used to love those books, that choose your own adventures. And so to me, I sort of think about that as wellness. I say in this, it's a choose your own wellness adventure, because what I need is going to be very different. And even individually, what you need at a certain time in your life is going to change as you change jobs, as things happen in your personal life, and, you grow and you develop. And so I think wellness kind of ebbs and flows, and we need to figure out at this moment, like, what we need for us to be our most fulfilled, to be at our best.
And in your book, you talk about balance and you talk about harmony. So are they the same or are they distinctive?
To me, they're very distinctive. When somebody says, people ask me all the time, can you come and talk to me about work-life balance? And I say, well, no, because I think work-life balance is a myth. But I'm happy to talk to you about work-life harmony. And the reason I kind of came up with that is, to me, balance implies like everything has to be equal.
Sure.
And if we can just have all the different parts of our lives, like our professional life, our personal life, our health, equal, then everything's going to be okay. But as you know, life's not static. And so I really like the idea of like a song, like how can I harmonize my life in a way that works for me? Because, as a busy lawyer, for instance, like you don't always have like a week where everything is perfectly balanced, if you will. But how can I still make sure I'm giving something to the different areas of my life that are important to me? I always tell my clients, like, how do I get off walking that tightrope, right, where I have to be perfect all the time and just sort of have a little bit more harmony?
Right, yeah. And so what is a suggested game plan would you say that someone should try to set up for themselves?
I always say, first of all, think about what are your values or your priorities. If you think about what are my top like 5 priorities, 5 values for me right now, and how can I make sure that I'm attending to those things when you're thinking about your different life domains, right? Because we have our career and our finances, but we also have, our friends and our families, the different communities that we're a part of, your health and wellness. People have personal development that's important to them, spirituality, contribution, what kind of, I'm a big fan of attitude, right? How do I approach the world? And thinking about, what are my top 3 domains I want to make sure I focus on? So, maybe you're really busy one week and you don't have time to have dinner with your family every night, but you can still make time that one night, and everyone's going to put their phones away. And you're actually going to have a conversation with each other, or you're like, what, I got to set some boundaries in my life so I can also be really good at my career, but have time for my family, have time for my wellness. So it's really important to think about, what your priorities are and how do you make that happen in ways that actually work for you.
Sure, yeah. So you prioritize in terms of work, family, and then also about yourself. Now you mentioned in your book about self-care, right? So why is self-care so important?
Self-care is so important because we can't perform at our best and function at our best if we don't take care of ourselves. I sort of think about it as, that oxygen mask rule. When you go on the airplane, right, the flight attendant tells you to put your oxygen mask on first before you assist other people. And if you're not giving yourself that self-care, giving yourself some oxygen on a regular basis, you're not going to be at the best. So whatever you're trying to protect, whether it's putting your job first, putting your family first, that stuff is eventually going to falter because you're not able to be there for yourself.
Yeah. So start out with yourself, take care of yourself, right? But sometimes that's difficult because, society kind of makes us feel at least that we're being selfish, right?
Yeah.
That, we got to take care of others because it's always the concept of we're supposed to take care of others. So how do you work that into your daily life?
I think it's first thing, it's changing that mindset, right? Like I can't pour out from an empty cup. So we've got to make sure we're filling our cups up, and even just doing little things. Like I love to help people, and I talk about this a lot in my book, build routines. Like how can I get stuff into routines, whether it's, my exercise, doing things that bring me joy, eating healthy, having some mindfulness, or just a minute to take a break, making sure we get good sleep. So even just starting with one lifestyle thing that you think would be good for you to add in, and figuring out where in your routine you can make that happen. But being flexible. If, for instance, at the beginning of the year, right, a lot of people get into exercise again. They want to get their workouts in. You might say, okay, 3 times a week, I'm going to exercise for 30 minutes. I'm going to put it in my calendar. But when you get busy, when a kid gets sick, when something happens, that might, change. Well, can I still get in 5 or 10 minutes? I recently just got all the lawyers in my office a little 5-minute hourglass, which they're all very into, which I was very happy about. But I said, at least once a day, flip this hourglass, shut your doors, and take 5 minutes for yourself. Okay. And I'm like, you could do 5 minutes, right? We could all do 5 minutes.
Sure. Yeah. So in that 5 minutes, for example, is it like meditation or maybe doing walking around your desk?
Yeah, it could be anything you want. You could do a little meditation, breath work. Maybe that 5 minutes is you when it's not freezing out, stepping out of the office, just walking around the block, calling up a friend and sharing a laugh and not talking about your job for a few minutes. No. Right? I think sometimes we think self-care, but sometimes it's just things that make you happy and bring you joy. I love when I have a free weekend, let's, taking my husband, we'll go to the movies, and actually do something like that. All of that is self-care too. And I think we forget that sometimes. Yeah.
And I know in the book you also describe, okay, so, you set up your routine, you're doing your little chart, but then you have some missteps. Yeah. But you could go back, right?
You can always go back. Wellness is not about being perfect, right? The biggest thing I see when people struggle with their wellness is they kind of get on a good path with their routine, and then something happens. Something happens with your job, something happens with your life, and you get off your routine. And we feel guilty, we feel bad about ourselves, we beat ourselves up. Instead of saying, okay, I hit this little hurdle, I'm just going to move past it, forget about it.
Yeah. So in your book, you describe 80-20.
80-20, yes.
Okay. So can you tell our viewers about your 80-20 concept?
Yes. So nutrition gets very complicated for everyone, right? So the idea behind the 80-20 is 80% of the time you want to make whole food choices. So that means I'm going to have my fruits and vegetables, my lean proteins, my whole grains, healthy fats, beans, legumes, right? The idea of just a whole food, as close to nature as I can get it. But the other 20% of the time, I'm going to leave a little wiggle room for, that pizza, that birthday cake. Right. A little bit of fun, right? Because that's really what having a diet that's in moderation is. Right. Yeah. Because people sometimes when they try to do too much, too strict, they can't stick to it.
Right. Yeah. So you could have a little M&Ms or something.
You could have a little M&Ms, yeah, as long as you're getting the vegetables in.
Yeah. And then in your book, you also get into an area that I always struggle with is sleep, getting the proper amount of sleep. Right? So can you share some good tips?
Yeah, so for sleep, right, ideally we want 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. That's hard sometimes for people. But, one thing I do notice is we don't always make time for it. We'll stay up and either do work late or we'll find a streaming show we love, right? And then we just, got to watch one more episode. So I think what can be helpful is really just making time for the sleep and, figuring out what you can do to kind of get yourself to sleep, right? Is maybe we turn the TV off, we don't look at our phones, and then we do something relaxing. Maybe you read a book, listen to a podcast, listen to some music. And, when a lot of people too have trouble when they get up in the middle of the night. We might fall asleep. We make that 7-8 hours time, but then we wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning. What do you do then? We have a tendency to want to grab our phones or turn the TV on. We don't want to do that. First of all, you don't want to look at the clock. You don't need to know what time it is. It's not time to get up yet. And do something that's going to kind of relax you. You could do some breath work. You can kind of, one of the things one of my doctors who specializes in sleep likes to do is a mind walk. So if you pick up, maybe there's somewhere in the neighborhood that you walk, or you might remember walking around the beach on a vacation, you kind of picture that. And the idea is we kind of want to get ourselves tired again. But, one of the things that impacts our sleep and we don't think about is how we get up in the morning.
Okay.
When you get up in the morning, when that alarm goes off, I don't want to hit the snooze button. If I hit the snooze button when I get up constantly, I'm already messing up my circadian rhythm and my sleep cycle.
Okay.
So the idea is when you get up in the morning, you want to put the lights on, open the shades. If you're able to, when it's nice out, step outside. But you really want to get your body going in the morning because it's also going to help you when you go back to sleep just to kind of set that routine that your body has.
So when you get up, just stay up.
Just stay up. Okay. And, if you can't, if it's too much, put that phone on the other end of the room if that's your alarm or your alarm clock, because eventually you're going to get sick of having to get up and turn it on and off.
And what about those that, have to have like coffee to get going in the morning? I mean, is that something that's conducive to?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having a cup of coffee in the morning. It's just right when we get up, we want to get up. Not hit the snooze button, and then have that cup of coffee.
Okay. And so one of the things that I think you're suggesting is that, when you're ready to go to sleep, put the phone down. Don't scroll at the last minute, do the TikToks or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And you just put it aside and just go to sleep.
And I have some clients, I've told them they'll put their phones outside the room and they get an old school alarm clock so they're not tempted, right? So if you're somebody that's I'm addicted to my phone, try that.
Yeah. And getting to breathing, I know some people that have read your book, they find that very helpful. So can you kind of talk a little bit about that and what the importance of taking time and breathing and
Yeah, so when we do breath work exercises, even if we just say we're not going to do anything fancy, we're just going to take 3 deep breaths, what we do is we're actually lowering our whole nervous system when we do that. So it's really good to do some breath work. You can do it, like I said, just taking 3 deep breaths. You can do different patterns. Some people like to do the 4-7-8 breath work. So that would be breathing in for 4, holding your breath for 7, out for 8. There's also a thing called the calming breath that I like to do where it's, you breathe in for 2, hold your breath for 3, out for 4, like you're blowing out a candle, right? All of this just lowers your nervous system. So you just need to find kind of what works best for you. But I love breath work because it's a simple thing. I often tell lawyers and other professionals, before you're going into court or you're going into a big meeting, just to close your eyes and take in 3 deep breaths, just to calm down a little bit. It just helps ground you, and we don't do that enough.
Right. So, but the tips in your book, and and reading your book, it's applicable to anybody in all walks of life, right?
Exactly. And that's really what I wanted, this to be something that, if you're a busy parent, if you're a busy, professional, if you're a student, no matter where you're at, this is something that you can use to kind of help you figure out, well, what's a good wellness plan for me? What's a good routine for me right now?
Yeah. And you mentioned, clients. I mean, if someone wanted to talk to you about some issues they might have, how would they reach out to you?
You can go on my website, erincliffordwellness.com, and I have a contact form. And, I work one-on-one with people, and I also do corporate programming for organizations and law firms.
And then also, if someone wanted to obtain one of your books, how would they go about it?
So my book, Wellness Reimagined, it's available on Amazon and all your major retailers.
Okay. And in the book, you talk about a concept called SMART.
Yes.
All right. Can you tell us what SMART stands for?
Yes. So SMART is a great way to set goals. Now, these could be any kind of goals. It could be a lifestyle goal, a professional goal, personal goal you might have. And what it does is sets you up to have an action plan. So we don't just, visualize this goal, right? We want to start there, but then we want to really figure out how do we make it happen. So S stands for specific. So you really want to get specific about your goal. What is it that you want and why do you want it? It's so important to pull that onion back and really think of your why. I've worked with people over the years who will come to me because they are sick. They got, a diagnosis at the doctor and now they've got to change their regular everyday routine. that's not enough to get them to change. It's really like, well, why do you want to change? Why is it important for you to get healthy again? Maybe sometimes it's, they've got some job aspirations, or they're, getting married, or they've got children, maybe they have grandchildren, and they want to get up and down off the floor. So really thinking about what you want to do, why you want to do it.
And the why really is the way I understand from your book is not imposed. The why you want is your why,
it's
not
your
somebody
why.
else's why.
No, it's your why. Why is it important to you? And sometimes it takes a minute to get to that. And I spend a lot of time with people on figuring out why is this so important. And the reason is, like we talked about earlier, you're going to have a week where you have a hurdle and you don't want to move forward with whatever your goal is, with your action items. If we can reconnect with why it's so important to us, it can help us move past that.
Yeah. And then, so the other parts of SMART?
So then we also want to make sure our goals are measurable, right? How are we going to measure them? Is it going back to the doctor? Do we keep a habit tracker and we check off, every day when we're, finishing our tasks? I worked with somebody once that was a CEO, and he loved having, like, when he was a kid, a chart when his mom would give him a star sticker when he did all of his chores. So we used that, right?
Sure.
To make it fun.
Right.
And then you want to think about, how do I make it achievable? And that's really where you get into that action plan. What are like 4 habits that I have to engage in and really build those habits out? And that could be, I want to start an exercise routine too. When I'm looking to make partner at, my organization I work for, how do I make that happen? And then we want to make sure that our SMART goals are realistic. Do we have the resources for them? Is this the right time? Also, we're trying to do something in too short of a time? Sometimes, like, we forget about, what we could accomplish in a year versus a month, right? Sometimes, like those New Year's resolutions, people fail, I think, a lot by February because they're not thinking about, okay, it might take me a little longer to achieve it, and that's okay. And then, finally, we want to make sure that it's time bound. How long are we giving ourselves to really accomplish this? And again, maybe it's just part of a longer term goal that we have. And how do you celebrate? If you accomplish something, you've got to celebrate and really acknowledge it. So making sure you build in some of that too, because that's also going to motivate you.
And this is all a process. It's not something you're going to be able to do overnight, right?
Exactly. To me, really meaningful change is things that we accomplish over time, and and it's very intentional about how we want to do it.
Yeah. And any other tips that you could think of for our viewers that maybe it'll be in the second book?
For sure. I think one thing that I think is important, which helps with all of these things, is having some boundaries.
Okay.
Really just making sure that we are keeping boundaries for ourselves and with others. I always ask, one thing I think comes up a lot, no matter what you do, where you're at in life, is, when should I use my no button, right? When am I adding too many things to my schedule? And I always say, think about, does this go with my priorities and whatever SMART goal I'm working on? Also, is this something that is really going to benefit like me right now to add into my routine? And to remember that, a no now doesn't mean a no forever. I think sometimes we get FOMO and we think, like that fear of missing out. We have to do it right now. But, if something's not the right time, you can say to somebody, hey, you know what, I'd love to have dinner with you, but my schedule's crazy. Or I'd love to join this organization, maybe a charity thing you're involved in. But right now it's not the right time, but I'd love to attend that event. Because when we say no to something, we're also saying yes to something. Maybe our mental health, maybe what our real priority is right now. And so to really think about that when whenever you're building a wellness plan, whenever you have like personal or professional goals, if we want those to happen, we've got to have good boundaries in place.
Right. And in today's society, we are becoming more and more isolated, computers, iPads, cell phones. And so what you're suggesting is that we kind of push away from that.
I am. When you look at places in the world, they call them blue zones, right, where people live the longest. The one thing they all have in common is a social network and a community. And so I just think it's so important that we talk to people, that we engage with others, and like really form our own communities, and not just be always on our phones all the time. And if you don't like, if we're on social media and you don't like what you're seeing in your feed, delete those accounts,
Sure.
you know, because you have control over what you're looking at.
Yeah. And again, what's your website?
My website is erincliffordwellness.com.
Oh, great. Well, again, thank you so much, Erin, for being here with us. And your information that you provided to our viewers is definitely invaluable. And I would recommend, having read the book, because it has a lot of helpful charts and wheels in the book that you could utilize for your program. So thank you again for being with us. And this has been Diversity Scholarship Foundation's Profiles in Law. I'm your host, Jesse Reyes, and we look forward to bringing other prominent members like Erin from the legal profession to be on our program, our future programs.